This material is a passionate, colloquial takedown of a political commentator's evolving conspiracy theories regarding an exploding microphone, culminating in a technical debunking by a former tour associate, and we're just going to pivot right into the feedback to see how we can structurally and tonally improve this piece.
Yeah, I am, very ready to dig into the mechanics of this one. It's a super fascinating submission.
Right. So a key theme running through this material seems to be the methodical dismantling of a conspiracy, but the pacing feels inverted, almost like a mystery novel that hides the smoking gun in the glossary instead of the climax. I mean, we have this incredible definitive proof from a tech associate named Caboose, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But it's just buried at the very end.
Anchoring a rebuttal with the strongest, most definitive factual evidence immediately establishes undeniable authority for the rest of the discussion. The real weakness here is that the piece spends the first half just sort of, spinning its wheels on the subject's shifting contradictory claims.
Like the front wound versus back wound theory.
Right, and then moving to the exploding mic theory, and then even into merchandise sales. It's hiding the absolute best piece of evidence, which is Caboose's technical breakdown of why lavalier and handheld mics are both used simultaneously right at the very end.
I see that. But let me push back for a second. Doesn't establishing the sheer lunacy of the commentator's claims first make the debunking more satisfying?
I totally get that instinct, but you have to invert the hierarchy of information so that the hard, indisputable technical facts serve as the foundation. Doing that makes the target's elaborate conspiracy theory look entirely baseless right out of the gate.
Okay, I think I see what you mean. So how do we actually do that practically? What's a concrete example?
Well, you'd open the segment by explaining the standard AV setup that Caboose detailed. You just lay out that the lavalier microphone captures clean audio for the recording, while the handheld is what actually gets amplified for the live crowd.
Oh, wow. So it's just standard industry practice?
Exactly. And you bring in that 2022 photographic proof right there. Once that completely mundane reality is established, then you introduce the subject's wild claims about, Zionist pressure forcing a dual mic setup.
Right, because then it shows exactly how far from reality the conspiracy is drifting.
Is the connection between A and B fully established in the material, or is that an area to potentially bolster? Because by leaving Caboose's DM until the end, the listener just doesn't have the context to fully appreciate how ridiculous the opening segment's conspiracy theories are.
Yeah, if they don't know the mechanical reality up front, they might actually wonder if the conspiracy is onto something.
Exactly. You don't want the listener ever doubting the physical reality.
Makes total sense. So let's look closely at the section discussing the shifting narratives. I can see what they're going for here with the intense emotional reaction and the frustration, but I wonder if the facts are getting drowned out by the fury.
Allowing the absurdity of opposing arguments to speak for themselves creates a far more devastating and professional critique than relying on explicit personal insults.
Yeah, the aggressive language is a lot.
It really is. The weakness is that the text heavily leans on emotive, aggressive language, calling the subject a moron, saying she's insane, calling her a bitch, which really risks alienating listeners who are just looking for a factual debunking.
And it kind of gives critics an easy excuse to dismiss the whole thing as just a biased rant, right?
Precisely. So the suggestion here is to channel that passionate energy into a tone of analytical disbelief or, constructive mockery. You want to allow the sheer contradiction of the subject's own statements to do the heavy lifting, rather than attacking the individual directly.
I like that phrase, constructive mockery. How would you actually implement that?
So, as a concrete example, instead of calling the subject insane for changing her mind to generate content, you just aggressively juxtapose her direct quotes against each other.
Play up the comedy of it.
Right. Play up the comedy of her stating she is, quote, 100% sure the shot came from the front, and then almost immediately shifting to an exploding mic theory the next day.
Oh, and they could emphasize that bizarre finger gun thumbnail, too.
Yes, absolutely. Highlighting her pointing at a neck in a thumbnail is a perfect example of incredibly poor judgment. You let the audience reach the conclusion about the creator's character on their own without needing to use expletives.
That's so much more powerful. You essentially use her own archived receipts as the weapon.
Building on that point, what if we looked at it from the perspective of a neutral listener? Someone who might actually be turned off by the ad hominem attacks, even if they completely agree with the technical microphone facts.
Yeah, you really lose the persuadable middle when you get that aggressive. The listener stops evaluating the evidence and starts evaluating the emotional state of the host.
Exactly. Maintaining the high ground is just essential for that persuasive impact.
Okay, so what I really like about this part is the raw, unpolished passion throughout, but the sudden pivot into the sponsor segment feels like hitting a speed bump at 60 miles an hour.
Oh, man, yeah. Integrating promotional materials seamlessly into highly charged commentary requires a deliberate tonal bridge to maintain the audience's immersion and the narrative momentum.
Because going from an exploding microphone conspiracy to fresh-pressed olive oil is it's a lot.
It's massive tonal whiplash. That's the core weakness here. Dropping a highly enthusiastic ad read from TJ the Olive Oil Hunter right after discussing deep political conspiracies and character flaws completely breaks the tension and severity of the previous claims.
Right, it almost feels surreal when you're reading or listening to it. You're building this meticulous murder board in your mind, and then suddenly you're asked to think about fruit juice.
Yeah, all the red string just falls off the board. So the suggestion is to establish a clear, unmistakable boundary between the editorial content and the sponsor read. You have to use it as a structural breather with proper transitional framing rather than just a sudden, unannounced interruption.
So give the listener a chance to actually put the murder board down for a second.
That's clearly laid out. I wonder, though, if we've considered that while mid-roll ads are common, the way they are introduced here makes it seem like the hosts just completely lost their train of thought, which undermines the authority they just built up.
Yeah, it feels accidental. So what is a concrete way to fix that transition?
You could just insert a clear verbal transition like, before we read Caboose's definitive debunking of this mic theory, let's take a quick break to talk about our sponsor.
Oh, simple but effective.
Very. Alternatively, you could just bundle the promotional content for the Olive Oil Club at the very beginning or the very end of the piece. That ensures the momentum of the conspiracy debunking remains completely intact from start to finish.
That makes a ton of sense. It shows intentionality and control over the flow of information.
Exactly. And honestly, the investigative core here is so strong, it just needs these guardrails.
Definitely. So, to quickly recap the 3 actionable suggestions. First, front-load the definitive AV evidence from Caboose to anchor the truth early. Second, replace aggressive insults with the devastating juxtaposition of the subject's own contradictory quotes. And third, structurally isolate that olive oil sponsor read with a clear transition to prevent tonal whiplash.
Just a few small tweaks, but they will seriously make this argument practically airtight. The engaging energy is already there.
Absolutely. We really want to invite the listener to apply these structural and tonal edits and submit their revised work back in for further feedback. Thanks for joining us for this critique.